Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to the first episode of Paranormal Brew of 2025. This April will mark 8 years for Paranormal Brew, so I'm excited about that. So thank you, everybody, for always being there and all my guests and everything. Speaking of guests, my guest tonight, Dr. Don Molnar, I should say, being in the medical field my whole life, if you've earned the doctor, you should respect and call doctor. So Don, I always call him Doc whenever I see him. I'm like, hey, Doc, he is an ER physician who also is involved with paranormal investigating. And enough with me, but I'm going to bring him on because I'm sure everybody wants to talk to him. So without further ado, let me bring my boy on here.
Aaron. Hey,
Haunted M.D.
I know, right? Can you believe it? Haunted Doctor. What?
I'll tell you. How many times have I had you on? Like 4 or 5, right? Maybe.
I think so. This might be the 5th time. I appreciate you. I'm glad that you like what I do and interested in what I do. It. But I think, it's got to be 4 or 5 times.
At least, right? I mean,
yeah.
I remember seeing him on an event banner, and I was like, hold up, what? Oh, like a real, because you see a lot of people that say, oh, I'm a parapsychologist, or I'm this, or I'm that, but I was like, is this legit? Is he legit? An MD? And I looked into you and I'm like, okay, I need to have him on. This is awesome. Right up my alley. I've been in healthcare since I was 19, and I've worked in nursing homes and hospitals and, this and that. So this is
You're still in healthcare now too, right, Taryn?
Yeah. Yep. Still in healthcare. So I love it. I love all of your input into the field. So I'm gonna shut up. I'll throw up everybody's comments here, but just if you could just start kind of like anybody that doesn't know you, just tell everybody, where you're from and how you got to where you got to right now.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah. So it goes way back when I was a little kid. I started having all kinds of strange experiences. Some of my earliest memories are just weird things happening. In different stages of my life and different places where we lived, I used to would hear like my voice be called from the distance and there was no explanation for it. Or one of the things I remember I always kind of talk about is I remember seeing like this child-sized figure of light that I was like, what in the world is this? I remember me and my mom, we were always were close. And I remember telling her, I'm like, Mom, I'm seeing this child light figure thing kind of peeking around the corner, running across the room. And my mom, she didn't miss a step. She was just like, well, that's your guardian angel. And I'm like, okay. So I just kind of that's my guardian angel. And the reason why I kind of tell that story is partly to tell you that I've been having these weird things happen since I was little, but also there was an open forum at my house. Like my mom was more like religious. She was like raised Catholic and she was more about Jesus and angels and guardian angels, where my dad, was more into like paranormal. He was like a UFO, Bigfoot guy. We watched all the shows like In Search of when I was growing up. And I remember watching Legend of Boggy Creek and being scared shitless of Bigfoot. But just to give you some idea that that's kind of how I grew up with this like open forum for paranormal. Because some people are probably like, how does a physician or somebody science based kind of get into all this paranormal stuff? I kind of grew up with it, and it was kind of open in our house to kind of talk about it. And we'd often kind of have family get-togethers at different times in our lives and talk about, hey, did you hear this or did you see that? And we all like share our experiences. And sometimes we'd have similar things happen to each other, but independently. Like my dad would hear stuff and he thought it was me at night. I would hear stuff and think it was him at night. And we would say, "Oh my God, Dad, I thought that was you." And my dad's like, "No, I thought that was you." And that was like later on in my life. So I was always interested in paranormal. In fact, my dad, I remember we used to have this old Jeep CJ. It was like a yellow Jeep with a cloth top. We would watch like something like In Search of Bigfoot. And he would decide, I grew up in Ohio. He decided we would go in the country in Ohio and look for Bigfoot. It's like me, my sisters, and my mom. We were in the back of this Jeep, and I remember driving around these woods and trying to find Bigfoot. And I remember thinking, like, being scared crapless, because I'm like, if Bigfoot comes out of the woods, he's going to tear this Jeep up, because it was a cloth top, right? So I remember just being, being afraid. But the reason why I'm telling you all that is that that's what we kind of did. If my dad saw some strange lights in the sky, we would go look. And we would talk some weird sounds. We'd go look. So there was always kind of this atmosphere at home about talking about ghosts and Bigfoot and UFOs and things like that. So I was always curious, and it seems like I don't really consider myself psychic necessarily or anything like that, but I always seem like it seems like crap just happens around me as far as like spiritual stuff or ghost stuff. Even here where I live now, I'm like, did I just hear a disembodied voice? Not right at this moment, but a couple of times I've heard a little girl's voice upstairs in our living room, and it's not our kids. So it's really it's crazy. So
do you find that the more that you do this, the more you're you always hear people say it's like a muscle, right? The more you do it, the more you're in tune with it, or the more I think the more you investigate, the more you do this, do you think that that's why now you're at home and you can hear a little girl's voice? You know what I mean? And when you're not investigating.
Right. It's a good question, Taryn. I know there's theories that if spirits know that you can interact with them, or they can connect with you, that they're more likely to come at you or try to interact with you if they know that you're open to it, or kind of like a lighthouse in a storm. So I think that's a possibility. I think the other thing that I realized since doing investigating, I started investigating with the team back in 2012-ish, thereabouts. You kind of hone your senses. I don't know if you notice this yourself, but like you're real sensitive to things probably other people don't pay attention to. Like you'll hear things, be like, "Oh, what was that?" And I don't know, so I don't know if I wasn't an investigator, I don't know if I would pay so much attention, but I find myself being hypersensitive, like, out of the corner of my eye, like, "Ooh, what was that?" Or today, in fact, I was working today. I was walking to go to my car through the buildings, and I could have swore I heard footsteps behind me. I even stopped and I looked, started walking again, and it sounded like there was footsteps behind me. So I turned around and looked again, and there's no footsteps. But what I'm trying to say is that you get like hyper vigilant, or you get your senses are like, you're more sensitive to things than probably a lot of people wouldn't be, So I find myself from over time being an investigator that I tend to probably pick up on things I don't know if I would have picked up so much on if I wasn't an investigator. So
it's funny. It's interesting because I remember, and I can't remember who said it to me. I wish I could give them credit because it has stuck with me. In 2010, when I caught an alleged apparition photo in Gettysburg. It's my only picture of a supposed apparition. And I remember telling the story, and I go, I wasn't investigating. I was just taking scenery pictures, which is what I was doing. And they stopped me and they go, but we're always investigating. We're always investigating, even when we don't think we're investigating, because we're investigators, right? So
yeah.
Like you and it brings me to what you said. Any normal person that doesn't do this, walking down the hall, they hear footsteps, they're not going to turn around and look. They're just going to assume somebody's walking behind them.
Right. Exactly.
You were like, I want to see who this is. Nobody's there,
I know. Then sometimes you start thinking you're crazy. You're like, even today, I'm like, am I just like, what am I hearing? Why, what the
Right.
hell is this? And,
And, you know,
but yeah,
and you're afraid to say anything to people because, like, so my building, my office, I was sitting there one day, and it's on the second story. It was just me in the office by myself during my lunch break, and right behind me I hear a woman go, "Hey,"
wow.
and I go, "Okay, all right." It's the
I
only
know,
time I
right?
ever heard anything, and we've been there since April. But you know, what is that? Like, I mean, how do you explain that stuff? And
I know, and it's weird because on one hand, you're like, you don't want to believe it. Like, I just didn't hear a ghost in my place, right? So you try to like rationalize it out, but you're like, I heard a voice, so I was this about a year ago. I was at work. I work in a hospital in the main hospital now, and I was working, looking at my computer, and there was nobody behind me, but I felt a finger poke my shoulder.
mm,
It wasn't like I think I felt a finger there. I literally felt something poke my shoulder. I expected to turn around and have somebody like, "Hey, Dr. Molnar, can you come do something?" And because the nurses, like a lot of times, I have my back turned to where the nurses come in, so they could come in behind me and kind of like tap me on the shoulder. "Hey, Dr. Molnar, can you come, look at this patient or whatever?" But literally felt like somebody pushed their finger into my shoulder, and I was like, on one hand, I'm like, you want to dismiss it like that? That had to be something else, but something touched my shoulder, and there wasn't anybody there, so it was pretty cool.
right. And how do you explain it?
I don't know. Yeah.
Like, there's times where I literally sit there and try to rationalize to my core um of what something could be, right? Like take for example that, like, if I felt something touch my shoulder, I'd be like, can my body, like, just dent in by itself, like make it feel like, can your body do that, or but and that's the thing, when you're not investigating, your mind's not there. So, everybody says, like, oh, the thought forms, or the thought, you're putting stuff out there, like, if you're not investigating, how does that happen then? If that's not you doing it, you're not trying to communicate. So when you hear things and you're not trying to communicate, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
How?
no, I agree with you. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's why I did a post recently on my Haunted MD. We'll talk about. I have the Haunted MD page, but I did a post recently that do you really need to go to a location to have an experience, right? And because for me, kind of like what you're talking about, what I'm talking about now, it's like I seem to have things that can happen any place, whether I'm investigating or not. Now, the famous locations like Hinsdale, or the places that you guys go to a lot. I mean, there seem to be more of a hub for paranormal. Maybe more stuff happens there than other places, but it seems like you can really have anything happen anywhere if you're open to it. And then for me, just so people know, I'm skeptical. Like I'm not like oh my God, everything's paranormal. Like even that finger poke, I'm like trying to make sense out of it. But when it comes down to it, something poked my shoulder. I don't know how to tell. I can't explain, like, because people go, oh, how can you say that, or how do you know this? How do you know that? All I can tell you is my experience was something touched my shoulder and there was nobody there with me. You know what I mean? I can't give you scientific data for that. I can't tell you it didn't happen. I'm telling you it happened, and I feel like I'm here to kind of report it. Like I'm a reporter for a lot of this stuff. It's like, and as a physician, I feel hopefully give it more weight, that I'm not that I'm not kooky or anything like that. It's like, so yeah.
Is it true, or do you know if it's true or not? And if you don't, I get it. But you know how they say when you die, a percentage, or they always, that rumor that they say, like,
Weight,
yeah, there's like
weight
a,
to the soul, yeah, like 21 ounces or
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, there's
21
like a,
grams.
is that true? Is
Yeah.
that a true?
I don't think so. Nobody knows for sure. When the guy did the experiment, there was a lot of errors in the way he did it. I can't remember all the exact numbers of it, but his sample size, like the number of individuals that he used to study, was pretty small, and then it was kind of inconsistent how he did it. So it wasn't very scientific, and they've kind of shown that when they try to repeat it, like with animals or something like that, they couldn't get that same results. So we don't know for sure. It's interesting to think about, but you'd have to kind of do a more controlled setting. But yeah, that's one of the things about. I think it's 21 grams. The soul weighs 21 grams or something like that. Um, but yeah, it's kind of been scientifically, it's not good. It's not a good. It wasn't a good study, so
Right.
we don't know for sure.
What are your thoughts on working you were in an ER setting, but now you're in the main hospital, correct?
Yeah, so I'm internal medicine. So I do it's hospital medicine from I take care of anybody from 18 to the time they pass away. So I do all hospital based medicine. What'll happen though? We do go down to the ER. Say you come in the hospital and you have a problem. The ER doctor will assess you and see if you need to stay in the hospital. If you need to stay in the hospital, then they call us. Then we come down and take over your care. So a lot of times I go down to the ER. I'm usually not the first one to see the patient when they come in the ER. I'm usually coming down after the ER doc kind of did their assessment. So I'll come down and kind of see what, if you want to stay in the hospital, do you need to stay in the hospital, that kind of thing. And then we bring you in. So I'm internal medicine, a hospitalist. When I first started though, I've been doing this like 24 years now. It's hard to believe, 25 years. When I first started for my first like 5-6 years, I did traditional medicine where I did office practice and hospital. I joined a group practice that had 4 docs, or actually I was the 4th doc. So every 4th week we cover the hospital. Then I did office. I did that for about 5-6 years. And then I really didn't like the office too much. So then I went back into just being a strict hospitalist. And a hospitalist, what they are, if people don't know, it's just all you do is you take care of people in the hospital. Say Taryn comes in and she has a family doc who doesn't come in the hospital. I would take care of her, admit her, discharge her, and then she would go back to her primary care doc. I would take care of her in the hospital. And then we kind of rotate. You may not always have the same hospitalist if you come into the same hospital. So that's what I do. I'm a hospital-based doc. I don't do any office stuff now. That's who I am. And I go down to the ER. A lot of times I'm in the ER bringing people in, that kind of thing. So
the hospital that you work at, I'm going to ask, have you ever had experiences there?
So I work in the main hospital now. I don't want to say any names, but before this, I worked in a satellite hospital of the main hospital that I work at now. In the satellite hospital, we had a lot of stuff. In fact, I used to post different things on my pages, Haunted M.D. pages. Lots of stuff at the other place. This newer place, it just seems like it's busy. But so that the finger poke happened at the new place where I work now in the main hospital. And then I hear footsteps a lot of times, especially sometimes I work nighttime. I'll be walking down to go to the ER, walking across the hospital, and you got to stop. Be like, did I hear footsteps again? Those kind of things. So, and then I hear nurses tell me different stories about things they've had happen.
So everybody you work with knows you're the Haunted M.D.
Yeah. So I get to hear a lot of stories, and a lot of people are real curious. Like, oh my God.
Do patients ever talk to you about stuff?
Yeah, because a lot of times the nurses will tell the patients, like if the nurse knows that a patient's interested in paranormal, they'll say, "Oh, hey, Dr. Molnar does paranormal stuff," and then the patient will bring it up and they'll ask me about it. So, and sometimes when I go into rooms and see people, they might be watching like Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures or something like that. So I'll say, "Oh, hey, you getting the ghost?" And then we'll start talking. It's actually kind of cool in a way because I think it's good to be able to talk to patients about like potentially there being an afterlife, especially people that are thinking about becoming hospice or end of life care, because you can kind of say, well, I've had these experiences that make me think there is an afterlife. So I've actually kind of been able to work it into being a physician where I can kind of bring that up and talk to families and patients. And I think it's been able to help folks.
That's awesome.
Actually, I'll tell you a quick story about that. So one of the things that happens that you can study is called deathbed visions. So when somebody's dying, they'll see their loved one, or like a loved one will come for them, or an angel will come for them, and those kind of things. So we had a patient that his family was having a really hard time making him hospice. He had some really bad wounds. He was on dialysis, really couldn't walk, but he was still kind of able to talk with them. He would get confused sometimes. But ultimately, we just, we couldn't get him out of the hospital for various reasons, and he just wasn't really doing well. And they were having a hard time deciding to make him comfortable because he kind of didn't have capacity to make his own decisions. So it kind of fell back to his wife and his kids. So I went in one day, this a couple of years ago, and the wife said to me, "Hey, he's seeing his deceased brother and sister, and he's talking to them." And that's where I kind of saw my window. I'm like, well, I do paranormal investigating. I'm interested in parapsychology and deathbed visions, etc. I said, usually when people start seeing, their deceased loved ones, that means that it's time for them to go, and it means their loved ones are coming for them. So not too long after that, within like an hour or two, the wife and the kids, the adult children, like, "Hey, can we talk to you?" like, hey, we think it's time to let him go. And I think it came from me being able to say, I think it's his loved ones are coming for him. That kind of helped them feel like they could make a decision of making him comfort care. And when you make somebody comfort care, if you want to talk about, we kind of make him comfortable, let him pass away.
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of work it in where I could kind of help them feel better about making a tough decision,
Yeah. Thank you, Destination Spooky. Let me just say that I've learned so much, so many good things from this show, especially regarding near-death experiences. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, Destination Spooky. Hey, everybody. I see a lot of people that I know,
Yeah,
too.
a lot of people say, somebody gave you a big shout out, Mr. Ray Savino.
Hey, Ray. Ray's a great guy. Everybody on here is a great guy. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yes. And Mark Higgins says, hey, neighbor.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people. Oh, and then I have to give a shout out to Maya Zhang, who's watching from Indonesia.
You read my mind. I was going to say something. Yeah, I seen her.
She was there. Yep, she was there. So
Lyle Lotch is on there. Lyle was. Yeah, I joined when I first started ghost hunting. It was Lyle's team. I joined. Lyle. He had Twisted Paranormal. Was my very first. First time ever investigating was with Lyle and Tana.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm getting stuck on the comments now. Yes, Patty.
I know.
Patty. Now, Patty's from Ohio. You're from Ohio, right?
Yeah. Oh, let me tell you, guys. I can tell you some more stuff real quickly. So I grew up in Lorain, Ohio. I did my college in Ohio, medical school in Ohio, and then eventually I moved to Virginia in 2009 for family reasons. And then that's kind of where I hooked up with ghost hunting. Was prior to joining a team, I had seen the ghost hunting shows. Like I remember seeing Ghost Hunters on TV, like in 2000-ish, 3 or 4, whenever they first came out. And I was like blown away. I'm like, holy cow, you can investigate paranormal? But I never started investigating until about 2011 and 12. I was actually working at a different house when I work at now. It's called Augusta Health over in Fishersville, Virginia. And one of the charge nurses came back and she's like, oh my God, we went for an investigation at, I think it was at St. Albans. I'm like, what? Well, how'd you investigate? Who'd you go investigating with? She's like, well, I work with Twisted Paranormal, Tana and Lyle. And I'm like, really? And she's, well, and she was like, and they're looking for more people. So then I met Tana and Lyle around 2012 or so, and they took me on. And that's where I officially started investigating the paranormal, was with Tana and Lyle, Twisted Paranormal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yes, I stand corrected. She is from New Jersey. She lives in Ohio now. Sorry, Patty.
Where in Ohio does she live?
Good. Where? Yeah, where in Ohio? I don't know. Let me see. So I'll get to that. But Jing is asking, Dr. M.D, did you ever experience anything or heard of paranormal stories from your patients who were in coma and what they experienced? That was going to be one of my questions. So thank you, Jing. And have you ever had a dream about your patient being in a coma?
Those are good questions. As far as a dream, I haven't dreamt about a patient, but I did. My dad died in 1994. So it's been a long time, but I have dreamt about my dad in dreams. And he wasn't necessarily in a coma, but it was the craziest thing. I'll tell you real quickly. So he had died of a heart attack, and I was actually in college. I was in way back when, and I didn't get to see him. By the time I realized that he had passed, he already had died, and I saw him in the emergency room back at home. So I never got to really say goodbye to him. And I kind of, you have all kinds of things. You feel bad. And, I was like, I think, I wish I could have been there, blah, 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 blah. So I remember having this dream. We were at one of our old houses, and we were like hanging out and talking, suddenly he dropped dead in front of me. And, right away, I'm like, oh shoot, I got to do CPR. So I started doing CPR and all this kind of things. And then all of a sudden, as I'm doing CPR on him, this is my dream, he pops his eyes open. And he's like, Don, he goes, you can't fix me. I'm already gone. He goes, I don't want you to worry about me. I'm okay. Don't worry about me. There's nothing you can do for me now. So it was like amazing. Even like now I'm starting to get teary eyed. I'm telling you. But yeah, so that was interesting dream because it was a weird dream that it seemed like, like he was actually interacting in my dream more than you'd expect, To
me, that's a visit dream for sure. Like I've had a visit dream with my dad. I've had one, and I had one with my mom. and but only one. And those dreams, they stick with you,
Yeah, they do. They do.
and you, it's like no other dream. I mean, I could feel my mom, I could feel my dad. You know what I mean? I could literally, and I can still remember feeling it, like as if I touched them, and it's just, it's a different experience. And I guess that brings me to what we were saying earlier about like the people in comas and people that have these near death experiences. I remember I had you on one time. I want you to tell the story. You shared a story with me, that you were at the edge of the foot of the bed of a patient that I think coded, but then came back, and you felt
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that was a pretty weird experience. I was actually thinking about telling you that story too. So yeah, so that story. Um, I had a patient who had coded or had died for about 15 minutes or so. And so for people who don't know, in the hospital I was in, we were in charge of running the codes. In the bigger hospital where I am now, we don't run the codes. They have a code team. But this particular hospital, it's like 5, 6 years ago, there was a guy who had dialysis. They actually did dialysis in his room, and he lost his pulse and lost his heart rate. I mean, lost his pulse and stopped breathing. So we had to do CPR on him. The kind of way it works, like if somebody codes and I'm in charge, I kind of stand at the foot of the bed, and I'm kind of like the quarterback of the team. You have somebody who records time, and somebody who does medication, somebody doing CPR, somebody managing the airway, and you got to make sure that people doing CPR don't get too tired, and you got to have them switch off. So basically, you're kind of coordinating all this stuff in the middle of trying to save somebody's life. And so he had, we were working on him for about 15 minutes or so, and I had my back to the wall. There wasn't any vents around me. There wasn't anybody moving behind me, and nobody was moving in front of me at the time. And I was standing there, we're kind of, getting stuff going. All of a sudden, I felt this rush of energy and wind, and almost like static electricity kind of go around me and almost through me from behind me into the patient, towards the patient. And it's like, what in the world? Is this rush of energy and wind goes through me towards the patient, and all of a sudden he got his pulse back. Eventually, or he got a heart rate back, and then a pulse, and eventually started breathing on his own. And then in this particular hospital where we're at, once we got somebody coded and we got him back, we would send him to the main hospital. So I ended up sending him out. So I never got a chance to really follow up with him.
ugh,
So the crazy thing was, it reminded me, kind of tying it into near-death experiences. When people describe near-death experiences, if they, there's different phases of those experiences, and sometimes you have all of them, and sometimes you don't, you only have a couple of them. But a lot of times people will report, they go through their near-death experience and they reach a point where they either go back in their bodies or they got to make a decision to go back in their bodies. Either way, they describe this like rushing sensation, like I rushed back in my body, and all of a sudden I was, I was back alive and feeling all the pain and this kind of stuff. But the sensation that I felt when we got this guy back, kind of going through me, made me think about that rushing sensation, because it was like this guy's energy was rushing back into his body.
it
So
stinks that you didn't get to ask him, like, did you experience anything when you were?
I didn't, and I wish I would have, because like I said, he ended up going to the main hospital, and I never did get to see him again. I think he eventually went home and all that, but yeah, it's pretty crazy when you're dealing with life and death like that. It's crazy. And then even when people die, kind of, when people die, you could kind of tell, kind of going back to your question about the weight, the weight of the soul, you could just tell that they're gone.
Like
I mean, anybody see somebody die? Yeah, you can just see they look deflated.
Right.
And it's more than just because they're not breathing anymore. It's because their blood's not circulating. I mean, it's still the same, flesh and blood sitting there, but you could just tell that there's just something gone,
Right.
and every now and then when you're there when somebody dies, you can almost get a sense like you can feel something move around the room, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, that's a good experience. That always, and that's one of those experiences too, Tara, like you're saying with the dreams. As I'm telling you, I'm seeing it, it's like it's so
Vivid.
alive in my memories,
Yeah. Has a patient ever come to you, and then had they ever said like, oh, I saw you working on me, or you know what I mean, like gave you any experiences that they had while they were under?
Not so much with me, but I've had people tell me. I had one guy, I'm sorry, one guy who had crashed his car, and we started talking about, um, somehow we got into the paranormal stuff, and he told me that he was out of his body at the crash scene, and he could see everything the paramedics were doing. Like they had to use the jaws of life and a whole bunch of things, like a lot of details he should have known because he was
Right at that moment.
right. He was technically dead for a little bit. So he told me when the paramedics came and visited him, they actually came by and visited him after they saved him and he'd been in the hospital. And he started telling the guys, "Man, I saw you. Yeah, you were doing this, and you were." And he pointed another guy, "You were doing that." He goes, "They were like, they couldn't believe it. They're like, how do you know? How do you know what we were doing at the scene?" He's like, "Well, I was above you watching," and they're like, "It's blown away." So that was pretty cool. Most of the stories I hear from people now, I haven't heard like the classic, like depending who you look at, there's like 9 steps or 12 steps to near-death experience. I haven't heard all the steps. One lady, this was recently in the last year or so. She was a younger lady. She had a real bad asthma, and she ended up having to go on life support. She had to go like on the last ditch life support. It's called ECMO. It's basically a heart bypass machine. Like if you have a heart bypass, if you have a bypass surgery or heart surgery, they put you on a bypass machine. So the ECMO is like a bypass machine. It's kind of circulating your blood and breathing for you until your body can kick back in. So she ended up on this. Like that was like the last thing you could do for her before she would die. And then she came off of that. But she told me she remembers she left her body, and then she went through the tunnel and saw like a light. Then she goes, she was in just this like a area that was this all bright light and kind of like love, just felt like love and peace everywhere. And she could hear like a man's voice talking to her. She thought it was God's voice, just telling her, "Hey, it's not your time yet. Eventually you have to go back, and stuff like that." So she was pretty convinced that she had this experience, and it's just,
Wow.
yeah.
Rich is saying, I've heard about experiences you're describing in the ER, but not pre-hospital. I worked as a flight medic at a level 1 trauma center in PA. At this, the norm experience is less common pre-hospital. Oh,
Oh,
is this the norm experience is less common pre-hospital?
yeah. 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 Yeah, Rich, I've kind of heard both. Like that particular guy, he had it at the site. I had another guy tell me something he remembers seeing, he was out of his body for a little bit at the site of the crash or the event. But then I've had people tell me they've had stuff in the hospital once they were in the hospital too. And then I had one guy to this day, I wish he would have told me. He would not tell me his experience because we started talking. He actually was really into paranormal. This like several years ago, and his wife couldn't figure out why he wouldn't tell me either. But he had some type of near-death experience, but he would not tell me. He ended up on a life support machine too, like the ECMO machines, and he survived it. But he was really into ghosts, but he would not. I don't know if he had a bad experience. So most of the time when you look at near-death experiences, majority of the time it's a good experience, but there's a certain percentage, I think 10-20% or so, where it could be a bad experience where you go to a dark place and feel a lot of pain and stuff like that. So I don't know if he had a bad experience and didn't want to tell me, or it just freaked him out so much that he didn't want to tell me because he had this experience. But he told me he had an experience. He just didn't want to talk about it. So,
Wow. Yeah, and I guess you have to kind of just, respect that. You know what I mean? Do you
yeah.
ever find that because there's a thing with people that come in that have heart attacks or open heart surgery or things with the heart where they become a little bit emotionally I don't know. I want to say that physicians and their doctors worry about depression afterwards or like anxiety afterwards and stuff like that. Do you find that people with the heart stuff tend to be a little bit more open to all of the paranormal spiritual stuff, or that's not a thing?
I don't see a big difference. I know some of the studies that are being done with like near-death experiences, different people doing research, they tend to focus more on the cardiac patients population because a lot of times they're having these code events, where they're having cardiac arrest that's related to a heart attack or something like that. So some of the research is focused on those folks. But no, but definitely. So heart attack in general, or any kind of life changing illness, I think you go through the phases like when somebody dies. You go through grief. Can't believe it. Accepting it, getting mad. Denial, that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of times people can't believe, oh my God, I had a heart attack, and this changed my life, and that's stuff like that. Um, they say that people that have had near death experiences tend to be changed in the sense that they tend to have more psychic abilities and maybe a little more emotional, um, and things like that. So I think though when people go through like a serious illness, I've had some people break down like they can't believe everything they went through and start crying and things like that. So
Do you ever find that the patients become attached to you when they experience these things, like after they're out of your care? Have they ever come back and been like, listen, doc, I need to talk to you about this? Or do you know what I mean?
I've had families reach out to me after their loved ones died. Like they had this really cool. Well, I guess it depends how you look at it. It's sad that the person died, but me and the family had started talking about what I do and with the paranormal, and the patient was actually interested in it. And then he ended up passing away. And then within that first week or two after he passed away, the family started noting all these weird, like the lights are coming on, and then the stereo he always played would come on. He had a workshop in the garage, so like the electricity would turn on in the workshop for no reason. So it was cool because they would call me and they say, or they would not call me, they would reach out on my Facebook page, or message me on the messenger and be like, "Hey, Dr. Molnar, you can't believe this. The lights are coming on, and this is happening, and that's happening." So it was kind of cool to have that relationship. And even some of these folks I still keep in touch with.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
you ever investigate a house? Like, let's say these people would, if they said, will you come out and investigate our house, being that they were patients or their family member was a patient, would you then go to the house to investigate to see if it is the patient?
That's a great question. I think I would. I would make sure I kept it private. I wouldn't post stuff. Like a lot of, I don't know if people follow my pages. In the past, I posted a lot of this stuff, so I'd make sure that I kept that private. We definitely got to protect, no matter what, for people that are like, how's a doctor talk about all this stuff and privacy. I don't share names. I make sure I'm very good about privacy. I also I don't talk about exactly where I work because that can be an issue too.
Right.
But yeah, I would, Taryn. I would. If they said, "Hey, come out, we want some definite answers," I would.
Well,
Actually, had a
and I think it would be a good. I mean, I think it would be. I know this probably sounds real morbid and weird, but I think it would be like a good experiment, if you will, because this person, you're the last person they saw, doctor wise, right? So
yeah.
there's that connection there. And then if you then are going out to the house, I feel like there might be, maybe there's, if it is that person, you know what I mean? Yeah. Hey, I remember that guy.
So I have an interesting story about so this particular patient. This is at the satellite hospital where I worked. So sometimes I would take equipment in there and do kind of like not really sneaky, but I would do like like quick investigations where I used to work. And I happen to have a REM pod and a couple other devices this particular evening. I was working night shift. This is not at the hospital where I'm at now, but the satellite hospital. And it was around the time that all the family had reached out to me about this. So then around that same time, I was messing around with the REM pod at work, and it started going off. And then I'm like, are you a such and such? Are you this? Are you that? So it started giving me like positive answers. And I'm like, are you so and so? And the REM pod just went crazy. It went crazy. And I think it was something spooky. I know a lot of times people like REM pods, it's not anything or whatever. But to me, it seemed to be like a back and forth interaction I was having with the REM pod, and there wasn't any normal explanation for it. So I was blown away because I'm like, are you so and so? And the thing just went, I was like, it blew me away because I was kind of like, it's weird when you go so because when something happens, you're like, well, what do I do? What do I do now? I'm like, obviously make contact, but now did I really want to make contact? So I actually was investigating. So I was in the hospital where he had passed away. So it wasn't in his room or anything, but it was a floor above where he had passed away. So I ended up having that kind of reaction. So I would investigate. I would make sure I kept respected privacy and and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to ask this question because it kind of piggybacks. But Carmen wants to know: have you ever had a patient who passed ever attached to you?
Attached to me as far as like a ghost attachment.
Maybe follow you. I guess maybe she means like, followed you home, or I don't know how you would know that that's who it was, but I mean, did you ever?
I don't know, but every now and then I wonder. I wonder because when I told you about that thing poking my shoulder. It happened at the time when a patient I had taken care of many times had passed away. He didn't pass away in the hospital, but he had died outside the hospital. But I knew him pretty well. And we had a special bond, and he kind of like every time he saw me, he was like, "Oh, I know Molnar," and I knew his mom, and it was one of those things like we were super close. So when I felt that thing on my shoulder, it was around the time that he had passed away. I couldn't help but think, this is just me thinking, but I don't have any evidence for it. But I kept thinking, like, I wonder if that was his spirit, just tapping on my shoulder, So it was this weird because it was this weird timing that the thing on my shoulder happened. So I was wondering if and I don't know if that was an attachment. I'm just wondering if he came back to visit. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed with the attachment thing. On one hand, I think sometimes it can happen, and other times I'm not sure.
Right.
But I know there's been times when I've come home from investigations and it feels like stuff happens at my house. That's kind of weird. So I don't know. I think it's possible, maybe. I'm not 100% sure.
Do you believe that they are? I don't want to say stuck. Stuck is a bad word. I hate that word. But for lack of a better description, I'll say it. Do you believe that they're stuck in the hospital for a little bit before they're able to move on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think people talk about the idea that people don't know they're dead. So
Right.
maybe in that first time period, they're kind of figuring out if they're dead or not, and they may linger around. There's been times when I've been at the bedside and people have died that you kind of feel like a weird energy kind of move around. It's nothing scientific, but you just kind of get that weird sixth sense that there's something in the room. Then of course there's the old tale about you got to keep a window open so the spirit can leave.
Open the window.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in general, and I know this is probably controversial for a lot of folks, I think spirits can come and go. I don't think they're locked into one place. I think they may favor one place or over another, like maybe the place where they died or someplace that had a special meaning to them. But it seems to me that if you're an intelligent spirit, you probably can come and go and do whatever you want. Now, if you get into the argument about residual energy versus intelligent energies, it seems like residual energies are probably more like a videotape or a movie playing over and over again. And those particular types of hauntings or experiences seem to be locked into the place wherever they are recorded. But I think as far as intelligent spirits, it seems to me that they should probably come and go where they want to go.
Yeah.
And maybe they favor, like for example, Hinsdale House. Maybe a spirit favors the Hinsdale House, but they could also come and go.
Right.
And having said that, I don't know. Maybe they can follow you home. I don't know if they would stick with you necessarily, but I mean, there's definitely a lot of reports as far as attachments, and you hear a lot of different stories of things following you home and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I really think I think it's in what you believe and how you perceive things, because I think that maybe something could follow you, but I feel like if there's a spirit there, they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
So why the heck would it want to come home with me? Right.
Right. Have you thought you ever had attachment? I mean, you go to a lot of places.
No, I knock on wood. No, I've never. I used to like. I think if like hearing that hay at my job, if I would have, that would be something that I think that somebody, if they believed in attachments, they would think that they brought something with them, because why would there be a spirit at my job? Right. At my work. But I think that I like you, I think the same thing. They have free will. They can come and go as they please and go wherever they want to go. I think that you think about all of the people that have died forever. You know what I mean? Like one might just be passing through. My old job I was at, I was the only one there again. And clear as day, a woman said, "What is this place?" That was the only thing I heard. But like, that could have been just like somebody passing, all of a sudden they're in this spot where they normally used to be. But like anybody that believes in attachments or believes that, you know what I mean? They would think something followed you. I get joked about it with people that don't ghost hunt, like, someone's going to follow you home and blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
it hasn't. Knock on wood, has not happened
Yeah.
that I know of. Because wherever, and I'm sure you get the same thing wherever you go. People are like, oh well, everywhere you go is haunted. Well, no, maybe we're just able to hear, see, and feel a little bit more than what the normal average person can. So
Right. Right. Yeah.
yeah, so that doesn't mean every place is haunted. It's just that you are able to pick up on that stuff a little bit easier than somebody else. You know,
Right.
I
Right.
mean, what? Excuse me. What has been the the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you at your job?
At my job. Oh, okay. Yeah, think about that for a minute. Trying to think. There's a bunch of different things. There was one time I know I was staying overnight. This is at the smaller hospital I was working at, and I was sleeping, and something smacked. There was a bedside table next to the bed. There was two different sleeping areas in this particular our doctor suite there, and I was sleeping and had the door closed, and something just smacked the table, and it scared the crap out of me because it was totally unexpected, and that was kind of weird. Like to me, that kind of freaked me out because I'm like, they have that kind of force, and then also it was this particular room was where the light would come on in the bathroom by itself too. We had motion activated lights. The light didn't come on this particular time, but something smacked it and smacked the table next to me and woke me up. And then in that same area, we'd often hear there was like a common area where there was like a TV and a little fridge and some workstations, and then the two bedrooms were off on each side of there. So when you would go to sleep, you would close the door to the common area, and not just me, but a lot of other doctors that would stay overnight would hear, you would swear that somebody came in to the common area into our office, although they really shouldn't have because it was like nighttime and only so many people had access to it. But you would hear stuff moving around. And I remember like opening my door real quick and there was nobody there. But it was clear. I mean, Taryn, without a doubt, you would swear like 99.9% that there was going to be a person in there. Right. And you'd open that up and there was no way they could get out quick enough without being seen. And it wasn't just me, it was me, and there was some other doctors, even docs who were kind of skeptical about paranormal, because they would often come to me and say, Don, I think there's some ghosts in our office. And so that was kind of weird. It wasn't so much, it was creepy in the sense that it was so real.
Right,
like,
right.
It's like, some of the stuff you're like, I think I heard a footstep, or I think I heard this, but it was like clearly somebody was moving around in that common area. It was like, so it was interesting but creepy and spooky at the same time.
I mean, did you ever consider that maybe it could have been past employees, like physicians or nurses or people that used to work there? Which would suck. Can you imagine in the afterlife you're still going to work?
I know, right? Actually, so in that particular, our office in that hospital was next to the office for the pharmacist, and the pharmacist who used to work there when the place first opened, he had passed away. He didn't die there, but he really loved his job. So a lot of times we kind of wondered if was it his spirit coming back? Another thing that happened in that same office was I stayed overnight another night. It was in the morning and I was getting up and something banged on the door. I was actually sitting close to the door to go out to the hallway, and something banged on the door. And I was shocked because I thought it was a nurse coming and trying to make sure that I knew to come out or something. And I opened the door quickly again, and there was nobody there. So that was kind of crazy. I think it's cool and it's interesting, but also spooky when something so dramatic happens. When you got something that's so physical, like a loud knock, or you hear stuff moving around, and then there's nothing there to explain it. So it's like that kind of like really hits home for you, especially if you're kind of a skeptical person. You're like, holy cow, something really hit that door, but there's nothing here to explain it.
Right.
So yeah. So I had a bunch of little different things happen kind of on the job at that particular spot. So
I find it so fascinating that you have two of the worlds that usually collide and you're making them work together. I mean, the scientific side of things, and then you have the spiritual side of things, and you're able to balance those two out.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people can't do that. You know what I mean? Like I and I also find it interesting that you grew up on cryptids, but then decided you were like ghosty.
Well, I kind of had a little bit of everything. I think probably ghosts were prominent, but yeah, I got my feelings about Bigfoot too. I'm interested in Bigfoot. Like I watch Expedition Bigfoot and all those shows, and I've had some actually had some patient. I had a patient tell me this is in Virginia by the Blue Ridge Mountains. He has some property out there, and he swears that he has Bigfoot out on his property. I don't want to say exactly where it's at, so doesn't cause people to go out that way. But he told me he actually showed me some heat. He actually showed me some thermal footage or thermal pictures. They were kind of it was hard to say. It wasn't directly. It wasn't a thermal picture where it was 100% Bigfoot, but there was definitely something there in the woods. It was hard to tell. But he said they would come down to his house, and he had some kind of like rocks, decorative rocks in the back of his on his deck, and they would rearrange all those things, and then they would come bang on the house sometimes. And he was pretty real. He seemed pretty realistic. Like he was telling me this stuff just matter of fact, and he seemed like just like a good old boy. And I don't think he was imagining it. So, and he said that he had some kind of like miniature windmill that they knocked over and bent the things. But yes, I don't know. So I'm interested in Bigfoot too. Probably more ghost kind of stuff, but UFOs I'm a little skeptical on, but it seems like something's going on with those,
Yeah. Dominique says, as a death worker, I hope I'm saying your name right. I apologize if I am not. But as a death worker, it always amazes me the souls that stick around and the ones that are like, I'm out and completely let go of this world. Yeah. I think my grandmother did. I've never had nothing from my grandmother. I never got any signs from my grandmother. Nothing at all.
Yeah, it is interesting, and that's a good point you brings up. I don't know. It is weird. Like, it seems like some spirits stick around and communicate, and other ones are gone.
Yeah.
Like I had a patient. He got in a car crash. His girlfriend ended up dying, unfortunately, and we were talking about like after death and things like that. And I asked him, "Did you ever get any signs?" He goes, "No, I don't hear anything." He goes, and he felt bad about that. And I said, "Don't feel bad." I said, "Sometimes people come back, sometimes they don't." And that kind of thing. So yeah, it was weird. Like, like like I said earlier, I had that one patient where, they swear the lights are flickering on from their deceased loved one. So I don't know. I don't know why some stick around and some don't. And
yeah. And then the selfish person, you're like, I want my mom and my dad to stick around. Like, what the heck are you guys doing? Like, where are you?
Yeah.
And then Dominique is also saying we have the Bigfoot Festival in the Blue Ridge for a reason. All of us absolutely believe they call it home.
I hear you. Yeah. Where is that festival? Is that the one up by Luray or something? I know there's one in the Blue Ridge. I can't think. Tim Balke. I just saw a Tim Balke sign on too. I know me and Tim have ghost hunted for a long time.
So Chad Reynolds is asking, has Don been attacked or scratched at an investigation? If so, what are his thoughts on being marked by a spirit?
Chad, that's a great question, man. And you must be like a mind reader in a way, because I was thinking about telling this story, but then I kind of didn't tell it. I'll tell you two stories real quick. So one story doesn't involve me. This is, if Lyle's still listening, he'll probably remember this one. We went to my first big investigation ever was at Hillview Manor up in Pennsylvania, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. It was my first real big deal thing. And it was, we had a lot of crap happen, but one of our investigators swore he got thrown down. The reason why I'm bringing this up is talking about being attacked or touched. He was pretty convinced he got thrown down by something. They were in part of the building where they were seeing like a shadow kind of popping in and out, and they started kind of taunting it and trying to provoke it. And then the investigator swears that this black shadowy thing came out and grabbed him and threw him down to the ground. So he got so freaked out that he went in the car and would not come back in. And it blew me away because it was my first investigation. And this particular guy was he's like a hunter and like a badass kind of guy, right?
Like a man's man, right? Like a man's man.
It wasn't like, hey, this guy's a scaredy cat. This guy was like, I'm not going back in there, man. Something threw me down on the ground. And like, really? Come on, man. And he stayed in the car for like hours, you know? So then we went back down and investigated it, and we thought we saw some shadowy stuff too. We didn't have anything bad happen to us at that point. But that was interesting to me because on one hand you think, well, could that have really happened? But when you look at his reaction and who he was, it sounds like something threw him down. Now, as far as myself, we were talking about attachments. I had, I forget where I went. I don't know if it was St. Albans. I came back from investigation somewhere, and we went to the store. I came home, walked into my living room at the kitchen. All of a sudden, I felt this burning sensation on my leg, and I know that I didn't bump into anything. I know I didn't like scratch myself on anything, but I looked at my leg, and there was like 3 scratches on my calf, and they hurt, and I know I didn't bump anything, but there was 3 scratches that were pretty prominent on my leg. And I remember like, what in the heck? So I didn't know what to make of that. I was kind of like, I'm pretty skeptical of that, but somehow my leg got scratched. So I immediately, for the non-science people out there, I got sage and I saged the heck out of my apartment.
Yeah.
From front to back, left the window open. And after that, nothing else happened. But I got to be honest with you that it seemed like somebody scratched my leg. And it was curious because I came back from a place where there's been some stories of bad spirits being there. So as far as on an actual investigation, I haven't been scratched on the investigation. I've heard some growling sounds. I felt my clothes be tugged on, different times. I felt that, but I haven't been like scratched or hurt on the actual investigation. So,
I I may be naive and ignorance is bliss. You know what I mean? But I always imagine that, we don't know what it takes for them to be able to communicate. So when people get red marks or scratches or this and that, like I always go back to Ghost, the movie with Patrick Swayze.
yeah.
And I always remember how he was trying to kick the can in the subway and he couldn't kick it. And then he used all of his energy and he kicked it. And he went flying across the subway. So I'm like, all I picture is like something going, hey, hey, hey.
Right.
Hey, and then you're like, oh, something hit me or something, or maybe their energy is just so high, because now they're in this spiritual world. You know what I mean? That being able to touch us, it comes across as something like what you experienced or something, or like red marks or scratch, you know what I mean? Because of the difference in the energy,
Well, that's our theory. A lot of times, on investigations, it's like, the theory is that to have any kind of interaction, they got to build their energy up. It's like they really, to even do like an EVP or a disembodied voice or to, potentially interact with the equipment, we kind of feel like it takes a lot of energy, so yeah, that kind of goes along with that. The other thing weird I had happen, I was just thinking about this. I was investigating this place in Elkton, Virginia with a friend of mine that I investigate with frequently. And we were in this second floor room of this, it was the Elkton Town Hall. It was built in the 1800s. It was part of the Civil War, and there was part of they favored the Confederates down there. And anyways, we were sitting in this room, and we started getting some interaction with the equipment. And then all of a sudden, I felt like something touched my ear first. Then it felt like something blew in my ear. That was Darren. That was the creepiest. That was just creepy because it felt like something blew in my ear.
Wow.
And
that would be creepy. That would creep me out.
I posted that back a while. I think in the last couple of months ago, I posted that. Just reposted it. But yeah, it was the weirdest thing. I'm like, you can see how I react. It felt like something literally blew in my ear, like if somebody was whispering or blowing in your ear. It was the craziest thing. So
I have a question, but I don't know how to word it.
Okay.
You've been to conventions, you've been to paracons, you've been to you have the, you've seen a lot, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that people tend to believe you more because of your profession?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it maybe brings a little more credibility that I'm a doctor, that I'm willing to talk about it. It seems like maybe people are willing to listen and maybe consider it a little more than if I wasn't a physician. I think still there's still some people that are like, how in the world are you as a doctor doing this, and why? How can you believe this? And na. But I think that's one of the things I hope that I can bring to the paranormal community is being a physician. I hope I can bring more credibility to that we're experiencing stuff on these investigations and something's going on, and it's not just we're not just running around in the dark, being kooks or whatever. I don't know, Terrence. It's a good question. I think some people tend to listen more. Now I'm not sure what they're actually believing, but they seem like they pay more attention than I think they would if I wasn't a physician.
I have to agree with you. I mean, even police officers and stuff like that. Like, I think the professions like that, because it's a very trusting profession. You know what I mean? A doctor's not going to lie, and a police officer is not going to lie, or a Marine isn't going to lie, or an Army guy, just because, you tend to, those tend to be a little bit more trustworthy professions in a community. You know what I mean?
Even like when Rich is on, he talked about being a paramedic.
Yeah.
Flight crew. I mean, you right away you kind of tune in, like, oh, let me hear what you got to say.
Right.
If somebody just come on and say, yeah, I had this experience, and
yeah.
Like that. So yeah.
Oh, I think it gives a little bit more credibility to your experiences, because you also being a doctor, you have that scientific side of it as well. The schooling from the science side of it.
That's why I think it's important to speak out, because I don't think we can say that nothing's happening, right? To me, like I was saying earlier, I feel like I need to report on this happened to me, and I can tell you that it was pretty real. I don't know how to give you the data for it, but I can tell you that this happened and it shouldn't have happened. And my best efforts, I can't find a natural explanation for it. So I feel like that's kind of I kind of feel like I bridge this gap between the science and the non-science, and trying to fill that gap, because there's parapsychologists are pretty science focused on it, and then paranormal investigators are more about getting out with our equipment and things like that. I kind of feel like my role is to try to bridge that gap and kind of bring people together and realize that there is something going on, and that what ghost hunters are doing is legit, just as legitimate as if you're doing a scientific study. It's just so I think it's important, because to me, I see, on the science side of things, you look at near-death experiences and all the research on that, research on paranormal, anomalous experiences. There's definitely good research on that, but there's also something to be said about the stuff we're, as ghost investigators, that we're experiencing. Because even though it's, we're not like, logging, specific variables and things like that. I mean, there's something happening to us as investigators that I think needs to really have a lot of credibility given to it, instead of just, it's mumbo jumbo, so that's why I hope I can help, shed light on that and bring some credibility that there is something that's happening as we ghost investigate.
Yeah. And I love that you use that to your advantage. And when I say your advantage, I don't mean selfishly, but I mean for your patients, when, as you said, as they transition or they're going to cross over, or the hospice patients, they have somebody to talk to that, one, understands their fears, but also has experienced unexplainable things that maybe put their mind at ease, saying like, yeah, look, I've had these experiences. I can't explain them. So I believe that there is something after.
I feel like it's a nice tool, another tool I can use to help people, and sometimes it really makes a difference. People that are kind of, really fearful of, they're near the end of their life and they're going to be hospice.
Well, I'm not near the end of my life, but I'm scared to death to die.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not there at the end of my life, but I am afraid that, like, that literally will keep me awake sometimes at night.
Yeah, no, I know I'm a little bit, I don't know if I'm afraid, but it's kind of weird to think about, that's for sure. And then kind of like, you kind of want to know, can I come back, or not? You want to get the answers, I guess. But the only way to get the answers is you got to go, right? Hey, hi, Donnie Parker.
So tell everybody where they can find you, your pages. And are you gonna are you coming like anywhere, doing anything, coming anywhere?
I haven't signed up for that or anything. I'm thinking about getting back out more. Nothing huge right now. Trying trying to think, what am I doing? I am working. So, Brandon Masulo and Dave Schumacher and Shane. Yeah. So we're working on putting a book together. I'm not sure when we're going to get it all put together, but it's getting into the final stages of it. So eventually I've been working on that with those guys, Brandon and Dave and those guys have been doing the majority of the work. But we're hoping to have a book out at some point. It's a study of Hinsdale House, kind of looking at a more scientific approach to that. So we're working on that. And as far as
Hinsdale, me and the Peaches love the Hinsdale House.
It is an interesting place. I've been there twice. I've been there with Dave and those guys. And then I was there with Christy Parker and Donnie Parker. We went there as, paranormal investigating, and it's definitely a cool place. But now I kind of took a break, Taryn, for a little bit. I stepped away for about a year or so, and then I'm kind of trying to pace myself. I think for a while there I was doing a lot too much, and I was away from home all the time, and just getting kind of cranky and stuff like that. So I kind of been trying to pace myself and kind of ease back into it and all that kind of stuff. So eventually I'm kind of slowly working on my own book if I can ever get it all together. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do a Haunted M.D. book, kind of like stuff we talked about as far as my childhood, and then looping it into being a physician and things like that.
That's awesome. I'm
working on that slowly, but I'll have to keep you posted on that.
Yeah. I would love to get a signed copy.
Absolutely. Hey, and then as far as where you can find me, right now all I have is my Facebook page. It's called Haunted M.D. Haunted and then M.D. Don Molnar Facebook. So that's an open page for everybody. I used to have Instagram and Facebook. I shut those down, but I'm thinking about going back to them. I don't know. I think you actually found me on Instagram, by the way. I remember. I think you came across Instagram. Yeah.
I was like, Doc, where have you been? For sure.
So do you think there's advantage to being on more sites, or I'm not trying to decide if I want to go back on, or
I don't know.
It's better to focus on one.
Do you do YouTube?
I did. I think I'm going back on it. I had a YouTube page. I had a YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
Yeah.
And I just got Facebook.
Facebook is just, unfortunately, I wish I could get off of Facebook. I really do. I'm just so network dependent on Facebook. It's the easiest. YouTube is the hardest to get any type of, traction. In my opinion, it might be easier for other people. But here's the thing, I don't buy subscriptions and this, that, you could always put the money out to, buy people, if you will, buy subscriptions and this, that, but I don't do that stuff. I naturally get my followers or subscribers or whatever, and so it takes a while, but Facebook is, I love it, but I hate it.
Yeah.
At the same time.
I know what you mean. I know.
Yeah. Instagram and TikTok they're fun. They're more fun. They're more, to me, they're TikTok, if you get 1,000 followers, you can do live things and stuff like that, which TikTok tends to be a little bit better that way. I mean, anybody that's watching can correct me I'm not a content person like that. So there are content creators that, rely on one or more than the other. Donnie says your page will make your brain work.
Thanks, Donnie. Donnie's a bit of
I like that.
I know. I got to get back to it. But yeah, I try to think of things that are interesting and kind of they hit me at the spirit of the moment, and kind of thought provoking things. Like I said recently, I posted that thing about, is it the location or is it just you can experience things everywhere? I think it's kind of cool to think about it. It's kind of things I think about. So, but I'm glad I know Donnie. I got a lot of folks on here that follow my stuff. I really appreciate everybody. But yeah, I need to get back on my page and start posting more. Like I said, I don't know what happened here, and I kind of just burned out on it. And then I'm trying to think how to say this, and maybe you probably noticed this with your page and Paranormal Brew. It kind of becomes a job. It almost becomes stressful because I remember I got to come up with content. Instead of just going with the flow and realizing people appreciate anything, they're just happy to have me do stuff. I got so wrapped up in making sure I'm doing content. And it and you know, and I'm kind of like
It is a job. It is a
yeah, and
job.
I'm kind of like an extroverted introvert. So I think it was taking me a lot of energy to be extroverted when I'm an introvert, you know, and so, but yeah, I need to get back to posting more and all that kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
thought about TikTok. I might do TikTok. I got to think about it.
Oh my goodness. This is my primary care doctor slash friend, Dr. Jay Patel.
Hey,
From one doctor to another. This is Dr. Don Molnar. Here's Dr. Jay Patel.
hey, Jay. Nice to meet you, Jay. I'm internal medicine hospitalist.
Which social media site might depend on somewhat the age demographic of people you are looking to attract. Just a thought. And that's true.
It's true. Yeah.
I didn't know. I don't know that.
I heard Facebook's for old people is what I hear.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. I'm like so dependent on network dependent on it.
Yeah.
You know, but I want to thank you so much for coming on, and I love talking to you. I would have you on all the time if I could have you on all the time, and I want to do an investigation with you.
I know we got to do that. Yeah, I'm happy to come on anytime. If you want to do specific topics or something, let me know.
We got to do something together, though.
I know. You know, we've been up at
You're in Virginia.
yeah, Charlottesville.
Is that near Withville?
Withville's kind of it's south of here, but you're talking like the Octagon place down there. Yeah, that's a good. That place is active. Holy cow! I'm probably like 3 hours from there. It's like you have to go down 81.
I'm 7 hours, but it is worth the drive.
That place, yeah, I was pretty amazed by that place. I had heard things, and then actually investigating there, I was blown away.
Me too. I did not expect to have the things happen that happened there. So I every time I hear Virginia, that's the first place I'm like, oh, I got to go back. I want to go.
When I went there, and it was a public event, so even with it being a public event, we still got a lot of great evidence. I was like shocked. In fact, my Tim Balky was on here. Him and I were up in one of the bedrooms, and me and Tim have worked together for a long time, and I'd never seen Tim get so affected by a place. He actually he got like emotional and had to like leave the building for a little bit. And so he had seen like a black shadowy figure. We both were kind of seeing weird stuff in the hallway, but then Tim I'd never seen him act like that. He had to like get out of the building. So I don't know. There's something there that really there's something there for sure.
Well, you know, the basement, you know, downstairs of there, that it was, there's graves underneath. They just, yeah. So, yeah, the Octagon in Withville, Virginia is hands down. I highly recommend.
It's good, and there's great history there too. Like he's got amazing historical pieces, you know, drums and different things. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, Doc, our time has sadly come to an end.
I know, right? It goes by so fast, right?
It does go by because I feel like I want to talk so much more about so many different things.
I know. I'll come back on, let me know.
Yes.
If you want me to talk about more medical type related stuff, I can, you know, do that too. Or
I do want to ask you one more thing. I know I'm going to hang up, but I collect medical antiques. What is your take on haunted objects?
You know, it seems like there's something to it. You know, especially like when you hear about like mirrors and things like that. I know, like, you know, Haunted Collector, you know, he's done all that stuff, and you hear about Zach and his museum. It seems like energy can stick with things, I guess. It seems possible. You know, from a scientific standpoint, you're kind of like, well, how is that? But I guess, I don't know. It seems like there's enough experiences and reports that it seems like you'd have to kind of take it seriously.
Yeah.
I think I'd be nervous. I'd be nervous to go get an old mirror and bring it in my house. if that helps you.
I have so many medical antiques, like old vintage medical stuff. I have a bayonet that still has stuff on it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
This is cool. Look at this crutch. Well, this is a bully stick, but hold on. Here's a crutch.
Oh, wow.
Some of it's unraveling a little bit, but
is that like Civil War kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, I haven't been able to get anybody to tell me, but it has, like, you see, like the like it's not normal nails. These are I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's like a
How,
tag.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it looks like maybe, but it's there's like fabric on top here,
yeah. It
sewn
looks
in.
old.
It's coming off, but I won't do anything to it because I'm afraid I'll ruin it. But yeah, I love medical antiques. Um,
Oh, have you had any spooky stuff happen? Having all
no,
that?
like I can't say, you know, because in my house nothing's really I don't recall anything really happening in my in my house or anything. And I've had this stuff for quite a while. I have chloroform. I have like I have all kinds of stuff. It's
What
like
do you, what do you got chloroform for?
I don't know. I I
Is that in case your man gets out of line?
yes.
Yeah, I'm going
I have
night
like
night.
all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
This is the coolest. This is I
pretty
love
cool.
this. I love this. It's funny I'm sharing this with you right now when I told you we were going to go, but this is actually Board of Pharmacy, State of New Jersey. The date is 1889.
No way. Oh, that's really cool. I like that stuff too. Yeah,
Right? All of
yeah,
the medications and stuff like that. I love stuff like this.
yeah. It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. I I'm weird like that. I mean, I have so much stuff. Oh my gosh. I have old blood pressure cuffs, just yeah, the bloodletting thingies, all kinds of I said bloodletting. I didn't mean it that way.
Right, right.
But like the big syringes and
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. I
I
think that
have all
stuff's cool
kinds
too.
of stuff. Books, old medical books. It's
Oh,
crazy to
I like those too. It's cool to look back through them and see what they were thinking.
yeah, and how they used to practice medicine back then as to what they do now. It's insane. It's just
Yeah,
crazy. But I digress. I was letting you go. But
that's
I want
okay.
to thank you so
You're
much for
welcome.
coming on. And we'll have to do it again sometime.
Sure thing. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And thanks
And for
everybody who
anybody,
tuned in. And
so
Donnie,
wait,
thanks
so
everybody.
where
And
can people find you?
so yeah, so right now I have it's Haunted M.D on Facebook. It's an open page. You can follow that stuff. I try to put up, interesting thoughts like Donnie Parker mentioned. I try to do any evidence clips I have that are interesting. Yeah, so Haunted M.D on Facebook, and then I'll have to see if I'm going to maybe get back on Instagram or something like that, or TikTok, or
Definitely. And I'll have to get you back on to Paranormal Brew in the future.
absolutely.
And and get to that book. I want to read that book.
I know I'm working on it. I'm actually making some progress. So.
Awesome. Well, sir, you have a good night
Thank you.
as
You too.
always. I love you, and
Gotcha.
thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Sure thing. Yeah.
Everybody, have a good night, and until next time, sweet
Good night,
dreams.
everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes.